The translation we do in our head is part of this really important series of steps that will get us from not knowing what to say to a period where we're actually starting to automatically fit things into sentences through exposure and repetition and just generally practice. So the question, when am I going to stop translating things in my head, is very difficult to answer. So when you learn a foreign language, there's a period of time at the beginning where you are deliberately and obviously translating things in your head. You're taking things that you want to say in English and you're transforming them using the patterns and the rules and the blueprints and all of those shortcuts that allow you to say the thing. You've learned how to do it, but you have to go through the process of thinking how it all works. Now, how obvious that process is and how long it takes you to begin to do things automatically will depend on exposure. It doesn't necessarily depend on anything as odd as natural talent. I don't fully believe that that is always a barrier. I think there are some people who believe that they're not naturally good at languages, and I think that's what usually holds them back and stops them from moving forward with the language or even taking that first step to learn. So with something like translating in your head, there are a lot of people who say, well, I really want to know when that's going to stop, when I'm going to start just being able to do it. And of course, we want to do that. We want to get to that stage. It's a great feeling when you can just speak and you understand what you're saying. But that process of going through and having to work things out is a really important part of your journey. And we mustn't forget that it is there to support us and to start cementing those pathways in our brain. We need to use them as often as we can to strengthen them. If we're searching for an answer and find it, then we're making that connection stronger. So eventually, those pathways in our brain will search and find that information almost instantaneously. When we speak, we're not necessarily thinking about the end of the sentence. We're moving quickly, we're adapting, and we're producing language almost without knowing where the sentences are going. And it seems like magic. We don't have to think about it. I can imagine the most ridiculous sentence in the world in my own language that would actually probably take me a little bit of thought in a foreign language, even the ones that I'm good at. So I could say, the yellow and blue polka dot stripy zebra skateboarded down the street on a golden carpet of pencil sharpenings. Absolute nonsense. And I made it up. I just pulled in words. I didn't have to think about any of the rules, and I didn't have to translate anything, obviously, because this is my language. So whilst you can get to that level in a foreign language, what it takes is going through a period of having to process those thoughts. Now, what I try to do is to make sure that that process is as invisible as possible. What you want to be able to do is to understand that certain things fit in certain places. And if you start learning the language and you start practicing with short sentences and then start expanding and increasingly adding new elements, then what you're doing is reinforcing those basic structures. And eventually you'll be so used to putting things into those sentences that you won't have to think about it as much. And I actively encourage my students not to do too much mental homework in between lessons. I think it's really important for you to relax and to allow those things to settle. Our brains are incredible things, and they do things without us even realizing. So the idea of homework is not something that I agree with. If after doing one of the lessons on my audio course, people start to think about weird sentences in their head or trying to put things together, if those thoughts come in, that's absolutely fine. But what I discourage is actively sitting down and trying to remember things. Because you know when you've got something just on the tip of your tongue and you're trying to find that word and it gets further and further away, we're putting pressure and stress, and there's that worry that it won't be there. We need to let that go a little bit. The translation we do in our head is part of this really important series of steps that will get us from not knowing what to say to a period where we're actually starting to automatically fit things into sentences through exposure and repetition and just generally practice. So the question, when am I going to stop translating things in my head, is very difficult to answer. It will be different for everyone. It'll come at a different time, and you won't realize it's happened. It will just happen. But you've got to let go of the fear of it never happening. If you carry on your learning journey, you will get to the point where you are able to say things without too much physical recall, without struggling to find things. If I asked all of you your address or the name of your pet when you were a kid, it's just there. It's instant, because that information is something that you've practiced. You don't even have to think about it. That's where we're going to go. And you can't help but get there if you are using the language in a way that reinforces those positive patterns. So you will eventually stop having to translate things in your head. Language is actually far less complicated than we might think. With the rise of all of these AI language models like ChatGPT and Gemini and the like, they are good at what they do because languages have patterns. And to be honest, the next word in a sentence is usually something that we can predict after time. Most of our day-to-day conversations include interactions and vocabulary that is very, very common. Unless we're doing a very highly specific job with a set of vocabulary that is very scientific or legal, for example, we're going to be communicating with people about general everyday life sort of stuff. And that really reduces the amount that we have to say. So we're on a winning formula here. We don't have tens and tens of thousands of words to learn. And the patterns that we can use to effectively communicate really well with people are far reduced. So you need to think about this as a huge opportunity. You need to let go a little bit of the worry of the early days and how it might feel like a struggle. It shouldn't, and hopefully the lessons will help you with that journey of letting go of that fear. But don't focus on the things that you think are holding you back. The things that are going to be amazing will happen, and then you'll suddenly just realize, oh my goodness, I just did that entire sentence automatically. There is a process going on behind the scenes, but you won't have to think about it as much. And it's an incredible feeling, and you're going to love it. So, got to let go a little bit. You've got to make sure you trust the process, and you think that the end goal, you being able to speak without thinking, it is there. And you won't realize it's happened. But when you get there, wow. So if you found this useful, there are obviously other videos you can check out on all sorts of questions that people ask, particularly those people who haven't yet started their language learning journey. People who have potentially given up and have lots of things in their mind that are convincing them that they can't do it. These are the sorts of questions I try to answer in this series of videos, and I'm hoping to push as many people as I can to that point where they can make the decision to start learning Spanish. It's the most incredible language. It's one of the nicest ones to learn and to pick up if you're a complete beginner. So any of those questions that you have got in your mind, or those reasons you think are preventing you from doing it, just check out and see if they've got a video on it already. And if not, ask me that question and I'll make one for you.